Hey gang, this week's episode is brought to you by oldschoolshirts.com. Hey, check them out. You like defunct teams and leagues and t-shirt form? Well, you'll find them there, but a whole bunch of other stuff too. Do you remember a radio station of the past or perhaps a mall that you used to go to? All kinds of great cultural and sports memories can be found at the great folks at oldschoolshirts.com. Promo code GOODSEATS for 10% off all of your purchases. And now, here's our show.
If you're a fan, what you'll see in the next minutes, hours, and days to follow may convince you you've gone to sports heaven. Beyond that blue horizon is a limitless world of sports, and right now you're standing on the edge of tomorrow. Sports, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with ESPN, the Total Sports Cable Network.
Welcome to Good Seats Still Available, a curious little podcast devoted to exploring what used to be in professional sports. Here's your host, Tim Hanlon.
If I'm a sports fan, you got to be kidding me. Hi there, it's Tim Hanlon, your congenial host. It's Good Seats Still Available, the curious little podcast that's devoted to what used to be in professional sports. How are you? Thanks for finding us. Appreciate it. Well, look, if you were one of the 40 or 50,000 or so lucky individuals that just happened to be pushing your little button on your Jerrold set-top box in your cable system back on September 7th, 1979, roughly about 7 o'clock Eastern time, you would have heard and seen exactly that, the two legendary initial voices and presences on your TV screen with this thing called ESPN, the Entertainment and Sports Programming Network. That was Lee Leonard and George Grand. I guess the only way you could get on the air the first day was to have an alliteration as part of your first and last names. But these are the two gentlemen that foundationally got the thing going. That was the actual first broadcast, the very first minute or two from ESPN. The topic of our conversation this week with our guest, who was there in the booth as those guys were doing their thing, his name is Peter Fox, a longtime producer in the earliest days. And even as we talk about the before days, many people think that, well, and rightly so, that the launch of the network ESPN was indeed in that September 1979 evening. But as we'll find out from our guest this week, Peter Fox, he will tell us that the actual start was really earlier than that, November 17th, 1978. That's when, in earnest, this fledgling ESPN thing was coming together. They actually put together their first actual telecast, which was, for trivia's sake, the UConn Husky basketball team against the Athletes in Action team. We sort of conveniently call that the before part of this story, and Peter was enmeshed in it, and this is why he's here to talk to us about it. He has a brand new book. It is a sterling effort, and it is a page turner and a half. And if you have any interest, any passing interest in the Today ESPN or just what was going on in cable television during this late 1970s period of time and understanding what was going into the thinking behind this fledgling 24/7 sports network, well, you should get yourself a copy of this book. It is called The Early Days of ESPN, 300 Daydreams and Nightmares. And of course, it's available wherever you can find good books. Your local bookseller, I'm sure, will be happy to order it for you. But of course, if you go to our website at goodseatsstillavailable.com, you can search up this episode number 351 with Peter Fox and get a convenient link to the book. It's a hardcover and I think also available in Kindle form. And a little early preview or promo here. You can also go to earlyespn.com, earlyespn.com, as we hear all kinds of noises behind us as we record. It's been that kind of a week. to order the book directly from Peter, and you can get you get a signed copy or some other special versions of this book. But it is terrific, and I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to get right into this discussion, this conversation that we had with Peter about a week ago. And let's get into this amazingly intriguing story, the earliest days, what was going on behind the scenes, this crazy guy named Bill Rasmussen and all of his band of merry men. We talk about all kinds of stuff. I mean, Getty Oil and how they essentially saved the network. We mentioned of some great early names like Jim Simpson and Chris Berman, the aforementioned George Grant and Lee Leonard, Bob Waller, Bob Lee, Tom Meese, and of course, Lou Palmer, sweet Lou Palmer, makes an appearance in this conversation as well. If you remember any of those names and then some, stay tuned, sit back and enjoy this chat we had with Peter Fox. Here it comes. Please, as always, enjoy. I was ecstatic to stumble across the publication of this book, and you know we squint hard to open the aperture, if you will, to the various stories of that, what used to be in pro sports and stuff, and television and media and all that kind of stuff certainly plays a role. But I love the concept of this book, because this is almost, as you sort of say, the before the before.
Pretty much that was the headline of a piece I wrote at the 25th anniversary for Connecticut magazine. Exactly that, before the before.
So
and it was the precursor to the book.
Yeah. So before we get into that, maybe a little bit of background about you and your adjunct to the ESPN story for those who are uninitiated. You were, by your account, I think the first or the second ever employee hired, along with Lou Palmer, I believe.
Yes.
Maybe a little background give us a little background to sort of set that up, and then I'll sort of pepper you with all kinds of before the before and during the before questions.
Are we trying to be formal as I do that, or are you going to?
This is a conversation. Look, this is a conversation. You just speak it from the heart and pepper it with whatever words you want to, and we'll edit it or take it from there. But let's keep it a conversation as much.
Okay. So you're going to billboard it your way in post.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
good.
Indeed,
I'm good. Okay. Oh, I hate live.
Don't even think about it. It's hardly live.
That's why I got out. I got out.
Yeah, well, give us a little background about Peter Fox and where he is and was at this time. What's your adjunct to the ESPN story? Maybe from
here's Peter. You know, Peter was a sports fan always, a street urchin, a guy with more street knowledge than book knowledge, who was gifted by the ability to put one word in front of the other. And I started as a newspaper guy, fell out of that because I couldn't afford to live that way. Went into some marketing for some financial institutions, but opened my own ad agency. And that's where I fell in love with production. I met a young man whose name is Ed Clancy, and Ed was big time in Hartford, Connecticut, and ultimately New Orleans. But he was an editing genius, and he got me into production, and then I wanted to learn television production, so I did. And the agency if you can imagine, the insurance capital of the world, Hartford, Connecticut, wasn't exactly Greenwich Village or Berkeley at the time, you know. It was wear a white shirt and a necktie and a suit, or you don't don't come to work, you know. And myself and a couple other people, a young lady who was creative director at a radio station, we just kind of shook the world a little bit with the way we approached electronic advertising. Now, that was back in the day when the newspapers just dominated. And so I became a television rebel, talking to advertisers all over the place. Ultimately, the CBS affiliate hired me to teach all of the major advertisers in the market how to use television. And of course, I worked my way out of a job. And so uh, that summer, a phone call from a golfing buddy, Bill Rasmussen, came and essentially said, "Do you think all sports television will work?" Well, yeah, Bill. He said, "Well, you let's go have dinner and we'll talk." And so we did, and he told me about what he and his son and a third person, Ed Egan, uh, was trying to do. And so I essentially said, "I'm in," and I kind of worked it, knowing that he didn't have any money for to pay me until he discovered an angel who gave him a little bit of money for payroll, and then Lou Palmer and I went on the payroll, myself as executive producer and Lou as programming director. And what our job was to put on television productions while Bill ran around the country trying to raise the real money and to convince the NCAA to give us the rights to all of their non-previously committed sports, and Getty Oil to finally invest and take our angel investor off the hook, and Anheuser-Busch to uh, jump in with a 3-year guaranteed no other beer uh, contract, and off we went. And it was, uh, you know, Chris Berman calls us the original Mercury astronauts, and I've kind of contracted that. Hard to describe orally, but I call us the Espionauts, where I drop the S and replace it with an apostrophe and use SPN and AUTS and maybe a little TM after that one of these days, but I don't want the big guys coming after me too soon. So,
Well, explain to me Bill Rasmussen at that time. Who was he at that time?
Bill,
And what was feeding his head with this crazy idea, I guess.
well, it's basically um, it's basically like a guy when you get fired, you got to go find something to do. And he's an entrepreneur and a smart man, and essentially, but the the real approach was we were going to do University of Connecticut sports on a pay-per-view basis around the UConn community. Connecticut, being between New York and Boston, didn't have a professional team until they got the New England Whalers, and Bill was the play-by-play guy there, and that's where I met him, and we made friends and started hacking around playing golf and doing things like that.
This is the old WHA, right?
Yes, yes, where Gordie Howe was playing with his kids. In any event, when Bill lost his job there, he came up with the idea to do the pay-per-view UConn sports. Well, at the time, the cost of renting AT&T video landlines to distribute the signal from a UConn sporting event was prohibitive, and we couldn't make the business plan work. And somewhere along the line, it may have been his son Scott, said, "Well, what about the satellite?" Well, we said, "Okay, let's find out about the satellite." And because it was in its infancy, as a matter of fact, there was only one satellite in the sky that would accept television signals for the public. And when we called the sales guy who talked to us was very, very agreeable, saying that he had a channel, but it was preemptible in a national emergency, and not a lot of people were responding to that. And we kind of thought about that after a bit, and did some numbering about what would happen if we had distribution across America. Well, all of a sudden the business plan starts to work if you can come up with the right amount of backing. And so we said to RCA, yeah, we'd like to take that channel. After all, if there's a national emergency, there's not going to be any football. And so we did. Uh, came up with the money. Our angel helped us do that. Interestingly, the angel, was not a sports fan, but a satellite fan, and so he saw the value when other people didn't, and that's kind of how we got there. And once we had the ability to distribute a signal, it became, oh man, where do we get programming?
Well,
And what do we do?
juxtapose that though with what was going on in this fledgling thing called cable as well, right? Because like 78,
Oh
79,
yeah. Oh
right?
yeah.
It was just, HBO is a couple of years old, but it was still a very much in its infancy kind of thing. It was maybe what, 20% of the country, if that, at that time?
Well, and a lot of HBO was peddling videotapes to cable, and not bringing it down off the satellite, because the cable people were not willing to invest in what we called earth receiving stations, the dishes that would take it down. In many cases, we had to subsidize that for some cable systems. But cable at the time was really a signal improver for the suburbs and the rural places where over-the-air television signals started to get weak and reception was poor. That's how cable started. And then as the satellites were launched in that era, I mean, that's where cable exploded.
Yeah, there was extra capacity beyond the repeated channels of over-the-air TV to potentially fill in with stuff, and there wasn't a lot of
Bingo.
stuff to fill in, so to speak, right? And
Bingo.
and in many cases, this is, I mean, I think a lot of people kind of look back and go, well, HBO probably the first, true cable network. That's not really true, right? They were only a few hours, I think, in their earliest days, and you're mentioning sort of the
Well,
the,
I
the
think
sneaker
I
net,
think
right?
WGN was on Satcom One.
Sure, like a superstation kind of model, right? The
Right.
broadcast, yeah, yeah.
Ted Turner's Superstation. WTBS was on the bird. Madison Square Garden was on the bird, and we were there, and there were some others, but yes, superstations were it, and MTV and CNN really didn't come into existence until after we built the model.
Well, let's talk about building that model, right? So I think everybody certainly, remembers, especially if you're a sports fan, or as Lee Leonard said during that first broadcast, if you were a sports fan, the September 7th, 1979, I think it's 7 o'clock in the evening Eastern time, sort of that famous, and it's available on YouTube, of course, launch. But you actually kind of turned the story back to when you actually became involved, and then actually really circle around the true real first broadcast, which was at least 9 months earlier than that. That was November of 1978. Maybe a little
November.
in, yeah. Give me a little, give us a lead in as to how you and Bill evolved from that golf game to you actually getting your first paycheck. And I'm sure there was some work that was done even before that paycheck
Oh
even
yeah.
arrived.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There had to be. I mean, at one point prior to that initial sign on, I was in New York at a place called Dolphin Productions, where they did computer animation. And there were only two of those machines in the country, one in New York and one in LA. And we wanted to do a sexy open for to introduce ourselves. And so I had worked with them with an advertising client, so I wasn't unfamiliar with how to do it. And the bad news was I thought with my reputation there with the previous work, I'd be able to get out of the building with a videotape, but I couldn't. And so I had to write a $5,000 at the time bouncing check that fortunately, between walking out of the building and the telephone call, our angel was able to cover. So it was, they were programs that we would put up on our bird, and Bill and a couple of the rainmakers would schlep around the country talking to major system operators, MSOs as we called them, to convince them to maybe throw a party and bring along a dish so that they could get the signal at the party and show them that we in fact were real and we knew how to do this and so on and so forth. That when I think of some of the things that we did to make those programs happen, we didn't have obviously backup program. What happened if it rained? Or what happened in the case of a triangle women's gymnastics meet where the Bridgewater State coach was not told it was going to be televised. And I have to be delicate how I say this, but the gymnastics team from Bridgewater State were, I think they played on the team in lieu of going to Weight Watchers. And so clad in spandex, it was not a pretty sight, and the coach did not want to embarrass the players and threatened to walk off. So we live had to shoot around that, which was I give Lou Palmer was a genius, and he could talk his way through around most anything. So we got through it, but it was not up to snuff, I wouldn't call it.
Well, but you guys were broadcasting essentially to no one, right? It was just more of like an early days kind of production, get the kinks out kind of thing. And you would be visible as Bill was going around the country to sort of see, hey, let's tune in now and see what we're broadcasting, even though nobody was really able to watch it yet.
Exactly. I mean, we would send a press release out to every cable station in the country saying, hey, tonight, if you feel like doing it, feel free to grab our programming. And some did. And we would get letters from places like Alaska and stuff like that. But people who would, because we'd put up a super, if you're watching, let us know. Here's a post office box, that kind of stuff. Back in the day, you couldn't, it wasn't interactive. So, yes, those were really just selling tools.
But technically, there were broadcasts, though.
No doubt there were broadcasts.
Interesting.
But there were broadcasts to show that we were real. I mean, who's going to buy an all sports network from a paper presentation?
Well, tell me a little bit about how 1978 and early 1979 plays out, and what your role is in all that, because it feels to me like the way you describe this in the book, the original model you're describing, Connecticut and regional sort of sports stuff, and the idea of maybe doing it nationally. It feels like the whole notion of what the network would become was sort of evolving as during those months as well. I mean, I guess you didn't think about this Sports Center thing early on and I guess you didn't think that you could actually get live events for 24/7 each day, right? Give us a sense maybe of how those months sort of rolled on and maybe what you all sort of learned and evolved to from perhaps where you began.
Well, the big part about programming was acquiring rights to every sport that the NCAA conducted, divisions one, two, and three, which if you notice they do today as well. That was not previously contracted, such as a few basketball games and an occasional baseball game, championship maybe, and football being the big one. But we promised the NCAA that we would do everything. We would take everything they had. And interestingly, the athletic director from the University of Connecticut was in the number 2 spot at the NCAA, about to elevate to the number 1 spot. So the skids were sort of greased for us there, although the television committee was run with an iron fist by a guy by the name of Bo Coppage, I believe. My memory serves me correctly. But we got through that and made the deal, but it was amazing. The deal was amazing. The deal was about a 36, maybe 48-hour triangle between Getty Oil, Anheuser-Busch, and the NCAA. Being Getty would say, well, where are you going to get your programming and where are you going to get your revenue? And the NCAA would say, well, where are you going to get your capital and who's going to do it and what's it going to look like? And Anheuser-Busch would say, well, how many commercials an hour can I get for X amount of dollars? And what kind of program will it be? And can I get an exclusive, which is a whole nother story, which if you've
Oh no, it's genius. Ingenious. I was genius move. I mean, I don't know if it was envisioned that way, the Anheuser-Busch deal. But let me just ask you this though. So this sounds to me like the ultimate hustle, right? Because you're describing three sort of points on a triangle, right? Where like,
oh yeah,
if Getty and Anheuser-Busch think that the NCAA is on board, then maybe we can go back to Getty and convince the other two that
exactly.
So based on your knowledge and your experience in being there, sort of which came first? I mean, I think you look back in history, it's kind of like, oh, they all sort of came together.
As I say, it was a 48-hour mad dash, not by me. I was tending the things at home, but monitoring what was going on. At those days, that was even early fax machine. So lawyers were schlepping around different airports and having meetings in airport, what do you call them, business centers, and doing contracts and doing options and doing options on options. And basically, I will if you will, if you will, if I will, if I will, if you will. And it all came down all at once.
Now that kind of happened in what, early 79, right? Like Marchish, maybe, perhaps, like after.
Yes.
And why college sports, say, versus some of the professional leagues out there and stuff?
The
only thing available?
Pros didn't want to talk to us.
Because
we were nothing. And the NCAA said, oh boy, we can get all of these sports done that we've been nurturing for years. And they had so many. If you stop and think about how many schools there are, how many teams there are, with Title IX, we're doing men's and women's. I mean, it was the big time boys. They looked at us and went, well, when you got your big boy pants on, come see us.
So not a lot of takers, so to speak. It sounds like that was when maybe even before this deal or maybe even after this consummation, when did people in the hallways kind of actually think that this may actually be, you could make a go out of it? I mean, it's one thing to get a deal, but it's quite another then to take that money and that relationship, that agreement, and put something actually on the air and viably.
When we got the money. I was at the meeting at Getty Oil after everything was signed. It was post Las Vegas cable show where the Getty people were with us, but they brought us back to LA to meet the CEO and stuff like that. And we're sitting around their conference table and, just getting to know each other. And Sid Peterson, who was the CEO, whose son and I became very good friends. He came to work for us. His father was mad. He wanted to go to college. But Sid Peterson looked at us and Lou Palmer and Bill and asked, "What's this going to look like? And who's deciding that?" And we looked at each other. I put my hand up, and he kind of looked at me. He said, "Young man," 35 at the time, he said, "I want you to know there's enough money in this building to buy ABC, NBC, and CBS. So do not embarrass Getty Oil." Well, okay. So off we went, and they sent a guy, George Connor, what a sweetheart of a man, to come and be their man on the ground. And we just kept saying to George, "We need this. George, we need this. George, we need this." And George kept coming back with the money. So it got built. That was the key. The key was the money. The money enabled, and this is why I really wrote the book, because up until that point, I had recruited people and assuaged people to drop what they were doing in the legitimate broadcasting entities around New England to come to work for us. And they did. And we kept building and building, but there is no doubt in my mind, Tim, we were in over our heads. We had a wonderful idea, and like you said, we know how to hustle. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean that we wouldn't take no for an answer. We were going to find a way to guess.
All right, what's this? Oldschoolshirts.com. Fantastic. You've heard me talk on and on and on about the great folks and the great wares at oldschoolshirts.com. Like the name implies, it's old school and it's shirts, and they put them together, into what they call oldschoolshirts.com. It's like the name implies, but of course we love them primarily for their sports wear. You name the league of the past, you name the team of the past, the chances are huge that they're going to have more than one shirt and different color schemes for things that you may remember from the United Football League or the Major Indoor Soccer League or various flavors of the original XFLs, plural, or the Federal League perhaps, or maybe World Team Tennis, or maybe it was the North American Soccer League, and on and on and on. But hey, it's not just sports. It's also great cultural touchstones and memories from the past. How about the officially licensed Evel Knievel connection? How about collection? Yeah, that's what he's trying to say. Various colleges. How about dead malls of the past? Ice cream parlors, maybe even radio stations that you might remember. Hey, even there's a latest edition of the now old, Aloha Stadium commemorative shirt. All that kind of stuff and more you will find at least a handful of shirts that you will just transport you back into your past, and you will amaze and impress your friends at the same time. It's oldschoolshirts.com. And we got a promo code for you, of course. Let's save you some dough while you go there. And it's promo code is Good Seats. Good Seats. That's the promo code at oldschoolshirts.com. Promo code Good Seats for 10% off all of your purchases. Hey, P.F. Wilson and your friends at oldschoolshirts.com, thank you for your sponsorship of the show. And now, back to our conversation. Tell me a little bit about the Getty thing, though, because I don't think it's obvious to a lot of people as to why the Getty name came into the mix. I mean, sounds kind of, I'm curious as to how, yeah, go ahead.
It's very easy. Our angel investor was just that, an investor. And they also had an interest in a hotel in Hawaii. And they wanted to get out from under it. And while he was out there, there was a Getty Oil representative who was in charge of non-oil projects and investments for Getty. And he was looking at buying the hotel. Well, in their negotiations, the concept that we had came up in conversation. And the fellow, Stuart Evie, he's no longer with us, a hard man to be around, but a man who loved the Hollywood atmosphere and thought that sports and celebrities would work well. So he took the idea to his board of directors and got the go-ahead to continue to investigate and work on our project. So it was serendipity in one way, because our investor was getting tired. He had gone to all of the places where you would think there would be interest. And if Stuart Evie was not the personality that I know him to be, to have been, I don't think the deal would have come down. But he wanted to strut around saying, as a matter of fact, he's written a book called Creating an Empire. So, and it's one, my book is one of three that likely have real, I've been there, truth to it, which I don't mean to say that the other books are not good, but they're written by people who aren't there and who are reporting second and third hand. So until that magic happened in Hawaii, I don't think we'd have gone on much longer, because our angel was running out of reasons. He'd have just taken the channel on the satellite that he was supporting and flip it.
How close would you say you and the team were to that literally actually happening? Like how serendipitous was this? Was this like bottom of the ninth, 2 outs and a couple of strikes against you at that point, or was it, did you still have a little leeway?
Not a lot. Not a lot, but I'm not privy to all of that. Like I said, I was on the home team, but as soon as Evie got the presentation, it was going to happen. He just jumped on it. But
all right, so you get back at the home base, then you get the word that all things are a go. So now what? You're Mr. Production, right? You're basically the guy kind of charged with getting this thing on the air, like as to what it's going to look like and feel like, and who you got to hire now, and what's going through your mind, and how do you start to block it out to do it?
I just start calling my friends, okay? But the key is we know and Getty knows that these guys from Connecticut, Peter Fox, is not going to be able to dial up the commissioner of baseball and get a response. My Rolodex doesn't have that kind of foundation. So what they do, and we agree, is they go to, there's a political fight going on at NBC Sports between Don Ohlmeyer and Chet Simmons. Chet Simmons is about to lose it. So he jumps ship and becomes the CEO of ESPN. And he brings with him Scotty Connell, the producer who made the call to televise Jack Ruby being transferred on November 23rd, 1963, and got the only live shot of Ruby being killed. So he has some amazing credential. Scotty, a wonderful production guy, comes and brings with him a team of 20 or 30 people uh, who help us do it. And that's the story that I write. I write about what happened to the, I want to say 25, 30, 40 people that I recruit and Bill Rasmussen recruits, and the team, the pre-money team, who, when the New York team gets there, they kind of look down their nose at us Hicks and give us the elbow or a little hip check. Most of the guys can't deal with it and they leave. Bill and I and Lou Palmer stay. Bill gets elevated to chairman of the board with nothing to do. I go from producing basketball to arm wrestling. And
An upgrade, huh?
Yeah, really. And it's time, it's time. It's time to love. And if you read the book, you'll know that I was a pretty high functioning alcoholic, and it was time to go deal with that. And so I did. And I took the media rat race, as you know, and back in that day, that was the three martini lunch days.
Oh, it was a lot of fun back then, I heard.
Oh man. Phew. It was, but my body just couldn't take it. I was gone. I was goner.
But yeah, what you're also describing, though, is not too dissimilar from what I've seen in my current realm of working with early stage startups, right? Where in essence, that's what it was. Is the founding team, right?
Yeah.
Their hustle, their vision,
Right.
making stuff up, if you will, as they go along. It's the dream is sort of like very real. They're all pushing towards something, but in some respects, it's almost like somebody buys the company or invests heavily in the company, becomes the majority, whatever,
Yeah.
and the early team is either thanked or not thanked, and it gets kicked to the curb, so to speak. So the pros sort of muscle, and it sounds like there was a hefty dollop of that
Oh, huge,
going on.
huge, a huge dollop. And that's why I wrote the book. Okay. I didn't write it for me. It ended up being my story, but I did it for those people who never got a thank you, never got well, you did a hell of a job, never got, wow, you changed the world. You showed the world how to use cable television. You showed the news people how to do it. You showed the music people how to do it. You showed the house and garden people how to do it. You showed all the vertical tennis, golf. If we hadn't made the mold or broken some other ones, it just would have laid fallow until Turner came along.
So
But
Lou was one of the first voices, right, that was there, along with the other sort of legendary names like the George Grands of the world and Lee Leonard's, the two guys who started, Bob Lee, of course, Chris Berman, and Jim
yeah,
Simpson, who there's a great a YouTube clip, I guess, from a couple of months in where he kind of just does like a half hour on like, our history for the first couple of months of life, which is just a fascinating take on stuff. But I guess the question is like, so Rasmussen's already getting kicked upstairs. You're getting squeezed a bit. Lou, I guess, is becoming
Lou is
just a voice and a reporter per se, right?
right. Lou is such a pro. He has a persona that's made for radio. He's not a pretty boy, and at the time, pretty boy was kind of where TV was. So, but he was so good at what he did that he was able to do like horse racing. He was so knowledgeable at baseball because he played in the minor leagues. Um,
He
that
was very cool on the air too. Had a good set of pipes too.
oh yes, what a set of pipes! Woo. Yep, bring him to work in a wheelbarrow. Yes, Lou stayed on for a long time. He and I continued to uh, do some things together. I did a couple of infomercials with him uh, afterwards. When he finally left, he really left for his love. He ended up uh, working at the Marlins games, being the stadium announcer, which he loved. I mean, that was he was in heaven, which is where
There's a great picture in this book in the your prologue there where you're neatly sitting in the middle of the control room with the loudest jacket probably in town. Uh,
isn't
so
that isn't that
you're
wonderful?
yeah, so this is that's it looks like it's from the debut that evening, right? So you're still around um when this sort of gets on launched and stuff. How long were you there once that sort of occurred, and how long did you wind up staying, and how long did you think you would be staying, especially given what you described earlier, sort of the cavalry kind of taken over?
I stayed for another 8 or 9 months, and my my addiction was just getting out of hand, and it was time to go do something about that. I could have stayed. They weren't going to throw me out. They were going to continue to give me stupid things to do, but it was time. It was time, and I am driven creatively uh, to do a lot of different things, and I wasn't being satisfied there. So I went back out, hung my shingle back out after I rehabbed a little bit or a lot, and ended up writing a lot of golf books and things like that, and doing a lot of consulting corporately, like you, and finally found my way down to North Carolina, where a good friend recruited me to be a mouthpiece for we actually we're a research organization. We made gasoline out of sunshine and water, and in a big federal grant. And then when fracking came along, we got that that money faucet stopped. So, but I loved it here in North Carolina, and um, I just hung out my shingle again, and we're doing fine. COVID hit, and then back surgery hit, and that's when I called Bill Rasmussen, and I said, Bill, I've been thinking about doing this book, but it's really your story. And one of the reasons I haven't done it is it's your story to tell. And he said, Peter, I got Parkinson's. You know, just please go write the book, and I'll do anything I can to help you do it. So between the days that of isolation that COVID required, and then recovering from back surgery, I wrote the book. And interestingly, I said, okay, how am I going to find somebody to publish it? So I just went online, and I knew it would be of interest, especially around Connecticut. So I reached out to a Connecticut publisher, Globe Pequot. Pretty good, a
Very
pretty
fine
good
imprint.
publisher.
We've had a few books from them in the past, and Lions Press, the
Yeah,
subsidiary press there, and
yeah,
oh, this is, I mean, it's and it, like, to your point, it fills in, I think, what I think most people sort of think of, right? I mean, again, that 1979 debut, right? But I think this is a really compelling backstory, right? And I think people know about the Rasmussen background story and that kind of stuff, but there's a lot of hagiography around that, right? And
yes,
I guess what I'd love to know as we sort of maybe round out here is, and this has been terrific conversation. I greatly appreciate some of this insight. Maybe you do mention, but both what you just described earlier as well as in this book, right? A lot of these, I'll say it, sort of unsung heroes, right? By name, a couple of
yes,
paragraphs associated with people that maybe, most sports fans or even the greatest of ESPN junkies have never even heard of before.
right.
Can you maybe give our audience a little, maybe, and a couple of examples, maybe, of some of those, maybe names and that sort of kind of come to mind, but whether known, like on the air and maybe not around anymore, or maybe behind the scenes folks that maybe give a taste of the kinds of people that they'll find out more about in this book.
Well, there are two that you're looking at on the cover. On camera is Mary Walton, and the floor manager is Bill Shanahan. Bill ended up being a vice president and stayed there for his entire career. Mary, on the other hand, married Bob Waller, one of the announcers, moved to Chicago because they promised Bob that he would become ESPN's Chicago guy. That didn't materialize. Their marriage dissolved. Mary became an advance person for the Clinton administration. Um, Moved back to California, did some more things. Uh, Now she's not a marriage counselor, but a therapist. Went back to school, got out of the media business, won a couple of Emmy Awards. Bob Lee, of course, is just such a prince. And Boomer and I got, I mean, if you see in the book where I taught him how to play the Mo Norman method of natural golf, and he actually invested in that company where I was the communications director for a while in the late '90s, and so I'm trying to think of who else. The real key there in that book is George Connor, and George is uh, the embed from Getty Oil, who to this day, when I talk to him, he said, after I left ESPN, he was there for 5 years. And that's when Getty started to uh, diverse. They were bought out by Texaco. Texaco didn't want anything to do with a sports television thing, so they spun it out to NBC and Nabisco, and that's anyway. George left, but he loved it so much that he didn't go back to work. He went to Laguna Beach and sat on the beach for 5 years and day traded. And he said it was the best 5 years of my life at ESPN. So uh, most people don't know that Humphrey Bogart's son uh, worked for us, Steve, and Ed McMahon's son worked in our library. Um, so it was Jim Simpson's daughter, Sherry, was hired there before Jim. And and whenever she's out, she gets mad. Oh, she gets mad. Oh, you got a job there because of your father. Bull. She's so, and she ended up marrying Chris Peterson, who was, as I said earlier, the son of the Getty CEO, who, because uh, I was kind of like one of the senior guys around the production thing. Chris, who was going to be a freshman in college, then falls in love with Sherry, and he comes to me and he's asking for advice on how to handle this relationship. Well, I'm not real good at relationships, um, or at least relationship advice. So, but those are the unique things that I like to share.
But it sounds like it was kind of it was truly like a family, I guess, in that
Oh yeah, oh
right?
yeah.
Just
We still
shared
talk to each
sacrifice. Yeah.
other that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk
No,
over.
no, it just seems like it's a shared sort of like sacrifice and thing. It's beyond, it's just you could not, how could you not be brought
You
together
know,
with this unique?
it was very interesting because I some of the other books talk about misogyny, and when you stop and think about the male dominated sports world and uh, how that might be, it's very easy to make that to jump to that conclusion. But when I talked to Mary and I talked to her friend, whose name is escaping me right now, and I asked them to write about that, they both said to me, "We can't. We didn't feel it. We were so busy trying to make this thing work that none of that shit happened." Excuse me. Edit.
Yeah, it's a startup, right? And it's
Yeah.
an exciting thing, and it's and I gotta think, I'm assuming that's why part of this is the subtitle, right? The nightmares part of it, right? I gotta think that a lot of people, including yourself, maybe especially yourself, just you wondered on occasion, what if this thing doesn't fly? What do I do next? Like, is this ever going to go? We're going to get the funding. If we do get the funding, I mean, we're going to flop. I mean, there was no guarantee in any of this.
No, not at all. Not at all. But you know, somebody will tell us it's not working, but we got things to do to see that it does. It was just that kind of young, not naive, but energetic and believing that energy could make things happen. And it did.
Yeah, you also get the benefit of not knowing what you don't know, right? Which is
Yes, exactly.
arguably helps you stay true in spite of everything else. All right, this has been great. So before you go, and then I'll let you promote. We're obviously going to promote elsewhere too, but I'll let you specifically do it. A couple of quick little threads here that I wonder if you have answers to. Number one, maybe any insight as to why Lee Leonard and George Grand, aside from the fact that they both have alliterative names, were the two guys to be first on screen for the network.
Yea, verily, a sampler of wonders. Hi, I'm Lee Leonard, welcoming you to Bristol, Connecticut, 110 miles from New York City. Why Bristol? Because here in Bristol is where all the sports action is as of right now. And we're just minutes away from the first event on the ESPN schedule. That's the 1979 NCAA College Football Preview. And then we're going to follow that with a doubleheader of games. Two of the Professional Slow Pitch League World Series games will be seen tonight. Now, softball is one of those rare sports that everybody knows something about. Why? Because we all play it on Sunday when we drink a little beer. Now, here's another innovation on ESPN, and it's going to be a big part of our future. The Sports Center with George Grand. He'll have the latest on what's happening all around. George?
Thanks, Lee, and welcome everyone to the ESPN Sports Center. From this very desk in the coming weeks and months, we'll be filling you in on the pulse of sporting activity, not only around the country, but around the world as well. If it takes an interview, we'll do it. If it takes play-by-play, we'll do it. If it takes commentary, we'll do that too. That's the way we'll function from the ESPN Sports Center, and we'll be filling you in on further updates as the broadcast progresses.
That was a Scotty Connell call. Scotty Connell, who essentially became the executive producer. That was his call. George was native. He worked for the local ABC affiliate. And Lee Leonard was close to the NBC crowd, having worked there. He, a whole bunch of those cosmopolitans couldn't deal with Bristol and left.
Well, that didn't change even 30 years on, right?
No, of course not.
And Keith Olbermann he's got a podcast now. He still doesn't stop talking about it. So
right, I know.
How okay? Any insight into why the first actual live game was a pro softball match?
Oh, because it's all we had live.
Any ideas to how that comes about? I mean, like why that game and I mean, the league doesn't even exist anymore, which obviously is fascinating to people like me, but that's a whole other story. And I know there was a ESPN 30 for 30 short done on the missing tape of that. I guess in hindsight, it's like, okay, I guess we got to run something. It'll be live. But in retrospect, it seems semi-comical, right?
Oh, it was. What's more comical is that the 3-year exclusive beer brand Anheuser-Busch Budweiser people are in the control room with me as we throw to it and go live. And there's Rick Weiderman with his Milwaukee Schlitz emblazoned jersey on, as well as 9 other players. And announcers going, Milwaukee Schlitz this, Milwaukee Schlitz that. And the eye rolling that's going on between Rasmussen and myself and the Budweiser people were good. They understood that it was beyond our control, that it was the World Series and it was an elimination thing, and they got there. So there we were. But it was a moment. When I speak about it, I usually tell that anecdote and then I'll pause and say, and when is the last time you had a Schlitz?
Sure. Yeah, that probably stops them dead on their tracks. All right, here's the last question I'll ask you then before that I promise I'll let you. So, was there? You obviously mentioned you could have stayed longer. Obviously, you have your personal issues to deal with, and obviously, that totally makes a ton of sense. But I guess I would say, do you ever? I guess regret's the only word that sort of pops into my mind. Maybe it's not the right one. Not having been there for a longer period of time to maybe perhaps benefit from some of the just outsized success that's come since. And paired with that question, did you ever imagine when you were there or even shortly thereafter that would ever get to this level of craziness, television, sports, and the juggernaut that ESPN wound up becoming? Did you ever envision that could ever happen when you were sitting in those pre-production meetings, et cetera, back then?
A little bit of yes. And that's a 2-part question, so I'll answer the first one. I went back in 1989 to become sort of a Charles Perrault, producer up and down the Big East and the ACC, doing up close and personal stuff for the basketball season. And it was my way of, I wanted to leave there with a good taste in my mouth. So I did finish the season, did some really nice work creatively, and said, thank you very much, and moved on to another project. So, but to answer your question about thinking about whether or not it would be there, well, I can tell you that Lou Palmer and I sat down and talked about doing the NFL draft, and we talked about doing things like that, doing movies and doing investigative reporting. That was all on a, boy, someday we'd love to be able to do this. But what we certainly did not know was that streaming would happen, that internet, we didn't know about the internet, didn't exist. And so some of the explosion certainly is attributable to to digital, and we were analog, totally analog when we signed on the air. As a matter of fact, the senior engineer, as we were launching, looked at me and he said, Peter, this is going to become digital in about 15 years. And I said, what's digital? And he started to smile. And of course, it became digital much faster than that. But technology is what took us there. So if you believe in technology like I do, if we launched because of technology, i.e. the satellite, and where the hell is it going to stop? That's the last chapter in my book. I didn't know the answer to that. So I asked AI. I asked Google's Bard, if you had to start ESPN today, what would it be like? And they talked about virtual reality and quantum physics and things like that, and where it would take sports fans inside stadia and the streaming. The only thing that I have a hard time with, I really, really have a hard time with, is the gambling, the sports gambling. And I understand where it comes from and why it's there, but I'm glad I'm not there to give the line after I give the box score.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And it's just frankly a matter of time before. And look, we're already starting to see the tips of the spears of some of these scandals and stuff, and history actually. Even when it was quote unquote illegal, the 50s and the 60s, the point shaving and all that kind of stuff. The coziness is just. It will not end well, and I wonder about integrity of the game and the games played and that kind of stuff. I just really worry about the coziness.
Between that, NIL, the portals, it's like sports is not sports anymore. It's money. At the amateur level, it's like travel teams. It's not Sandlot. It's not a kid playing 3 sports. It's a kid playing 1 sport with a helicopter parent. And that kind of gets under my skin, but that's because I'm a cranky old guy and get off my grass.
Well, no, but I don't disagree. I guess the real insightful question then would be, and I hate to sort of end on this, is how much do you think ESPN has been responsible for some of that, of where we are today?
Oh, mega responsible. I'll give you an example. When we signed on the air in 1978, the NIT was the predominant postseason basketball tournament. Not anymore. And 1980, was when we introduced the wraparound coverage of the Thursday, Friday first round and blew the doors off basketball coverage from there on out.
I remember that. I remember that vividly because I was constantly hounding my parents that we got to get cable now because of this. That was the reason we got cable. I mean, that was it. I was a young sports fan, and I'm like, all the games are on this ESPN thing. We've got to get it.
Yeah, no doubt, we blew the cost of TV rights to telecast sports through the ceilings, which in turn blows salaries of the people who, if I'm going to perform and you're making all this money, we want in. So now you got athletes making gazillions of dollars. Now you've got NIL where now you've got high school kids signing contracts. Come on. Getting paid.
Yeah, I'm not sure it ends well, but where do you think it goes? Do you think there's any course correction?
I don't know.
Private equity going to save everybody or not?
When the betting started to become acceptable, I would wiggle in my chair and then I would think, but they've been betting in England on sports forever. And it seems to be okay over there. I mean, I don't hear about a whole bunch of that stuff going on. I mean, the betting parlors in London are like right next to the pub, so that you can do both. And that just seems to have been part of their society for so very, very long. And typically American, I believe, is we take it to the nth degree. We take it to high schools and we make money. We're going to make money somehow.
Well, not to end on a negative note, though, I have to think though that you have to have an enormous amount of pride and frankly in shining a light on these early pioneers, and that's frankly I think what they were, right? To create this thing that we now know as ESPN and then some. It had to be cathartic is probably not the right word, but probably a nice closing of circle, perhaps, for a whole bunch of unsung heroes, right?
It was for me, and I thought, Tim, it was going to be a mic drop. It's turning out to be the opposite. It's turning out to be at 7:00 I had to take a nap so I could be fresh for you, And it's I'll be vague about this, but Hollywood is calling, and we are in negotiation. So telling the story of my friends for them and with them has been such an incredible, as you say, cathartic for me, or catharsis for me, that I have a big smile on my face when I wake up and say, what have I got to do today? And it generally is an email from somebody saying, wow, I can't believe you did this. Thank you. And so on and so on. So it's helped me renew some faith in myself, some faith in where living a good life will slow down and end. I'm still very, very healthy, but I'm 82 years old, and I'm on the afternoon side. I know that, and that's not to leave it on a bad note either. That's a good note. This has been a wonderful experience, as well as a wonderful conversation with you. You are so knowledgeable. You've obviously done your research or lived it. and both.
Okay, that was fascinating. Great conversation. And thank you, Peter, for making time for it. The book, Run, Don't Walk. It's called The Early Days of ESPN, 300 Daydreams and Nightmares. And it is available now wherever you find good books. Your local bookseller can get it for you for sure. Feel free to go to our website at goodseatsstillavailable.com. Search up this episode 351 with Peter Fox, and you can get yourself a copy from Amazon. We appreciate those referral shekels of love. And of course, you can also buy it directly from Peter and get a signature or all kinds of other sort of goodies there at and more about the story too at his website. That's earlyespn.com. Early, E-A-R-L-Y, ESPN, earlyespn.com. And let's see, what else? While you're online, keep our website, goodseatsstillavailable.com, bookmarked. That's where we put all of our episodes. You can stream them and share them with friends. Of course, make sure that you subscribe and follow us on your podcast feed. Make sure that you rate and review us. We appreciate that. Hey, while you're on our website, make sure you go to the merch section. There's lots of great stuff there, including our new collaboration with TeePublic. All kinds of great sports team logos and franchises of yore in all kinds of different formats, clothing and mugs and all that kind of stuff. Check that out. And what else? You can send us email at hello@goodseatsstillavailable.com. And you can follow us on the socials. On X, Twitter, you'll find us at Good Seats Still, and all the other places generally, including YouTube, you'll find us at Good Seats Still Available. Thanks to Jerry Payne. Jerry Payne's audio excellence comes through once again, shining through. We appreciate that. And more to come for the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned and make sure your feeds are clean and ready to go, because we got more fun stuff coming your way sooner rather than later. Thank you for listening. See ya.